Hello, my name is Reagan Ralph, which you can see on the channel itself, and I'm with my good friend Reuben Spry.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello, and we're starting a little sort of series, maybe slight podcast idea, however you want to label it, it's hard to say, for basically different metal subgenres and discussing each one in depth through individual videos of each genre. Would you say that's a good description, Reuben?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're aiming to do, isn't it? I mean, because there's an awful lot of subgenres in metal, aren't there? And I think it might be a bit intimidating to a newcomer.
Yeah, that's true. I think also starting off with traditional heavy metal, I think it's a great start because it's not only it's the beginning of what metal is, but it's also easy for newcomers to get into before going into extremer subgroups of metal that come later on.
Someone said a funny thing recently. He said, a friend of mine said that heavy metal is one of the lightest metal subgenres. it's just hilarious.
The oxymoron is beautiful. It fully is beautiful. Anyway,
it's scary, isn't it? So who are you, for people who might not know who you are, Reagan? What do you do? What's your kind of background in music, in metal specifically?
Well, I've been a metal musician for many years now. I'm not famous, so, but I have been immersing myself in the genre with listening to it, as well as playing bands who play said genres. I played in thrash bands, new metal bands. I played in sort of death metal style bands as well, in my time. So I've kind of dabbled here and there on it. I've been playing guitar since I was 12, and I'm 27 now, so that's 15 years. And I still play to this day. I release my music on my YouTube channel, which this will be going on, but it's also available on other things as well, so feel free to listen to that. If you're into things like death metal and melodic death metal, but that's who I am, it's what I do. And I'm also hoping to add just general commentary to the genre and the what do you call it, fan club of what metal is,
the community.
The community, thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. Brain not working today. So yeah, just add to the community. What about you, Reuben? What do you do?
So I'm a drummer by trade. That seems to be what I've ended up doing the most the last few years. I started off playing guitar. I got into metal probably around 12 or 13 when a friend of mine at the time just went, "Hey, listen to this," and it was Enter Sandman. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then my uncle actually said, "Well, if you like that, they've got this album called Master of Puppets, which is by Metallica, who I'm sure you've heard of if you've clicked on this video." I listened to that, and then I just went, "Wow, metal's my thing now." I love a range of music, but metal is like what I keep coming back to. That's like metal feels like home for me for music. I've played in a few bands. I've had the opportunity to play some really cool shows with some great acts. I've had the chance to go away to a professional studio and record with a producer, which was really fun. Yeah, I also work in live music as well, so just local crew sort of stuff, helping unload trucks and set up PA and video screens, lighting, backline, if they'll let me touch that stuff.
That's all good. Excellent. A great description of oneself, that is. I'm looking forward to doing these videos with you and learning from each other, and hopefully people might be learning from these. We'll find out in due time. So you know who we are, all right? But what are we doing? Which we mentioned about each subgenre. But what are we doing in this video? Well, if you see the title, you're probably thinking, okay, this is going to be about traditional heavy metal, and you will be right, because this is what the video is about. We're basically going to go into not just the start, which is Black Sabbath. I know there's a big debate around that, but let's be honest. Let's just start with Black Sabbath as the original heavy metal act. But we also go into, before we go into them and what came after Black Sabbath within this traditional heavy metal genre, we want to look into some of the incantations beforehand. You know, what led to Black Sabbath's creation and what influenced it. And see where that goes as well. So I feel like that's a really good start. So we're going to structure it very well with the beginning, so the intro to it. So Reuben, how would you describe the characteristics of traditional heavy metal?
So for me, when I class something as just heavy metal, to me, that means it's metal in its undiluted form. Not undiluted. It's not been modified. It's just metal. So it doesn't have any characteristics that would make it, for example, death metal or thrash or symphonic. Mm-hmm. So something like, I don't know, Iron Maiden, which you could describe as like proto power metal in a way. To me, there's like, well, it doesn't have any harsh vocals, so it's not. I wouldn't say it's kind of death metal or anything like that. It doesn't have any like double kicks or blast beats, but it's also not slow. It doesn't. It's not kind of like a lot of the psychedelic rock and blues rock that was coming out in the late '60s. There's something a bit more to it than that. It's too heavy for rock, but it doesn't necessarily have any specific things that would go, oh, it only fits into this category. I feel like a band like Iron Maiden can appeal to a wide range of metal listeners. Yeah,
for sure. Because, like you said, there's the lack of distorted vocals or harsh vocals, as you might want to call it. But at the same time, you know, they're fast and it's energetic, and obviously the distorted guitars and heavy drums is what kind of is the characteristics of heavy metal. If we had to go to like what you call the bread and butter of the genre, let's say, I would characterize it with, you know, distorted guitars. I think that's the first thing, like the start of the guitar being distorted and getting it as heavy as possible at the time, and having large solos and general loudness. I feel like they're very big characteristics. Now, I know when we look at old metal bands like your Deep Purple and your Led Zeppelins and so forth, we don't really tend to think of them in a modern viewpoint as being loud and heavy because of how metal has transformed since. But at the time, these were heavy. Like, these were radical sounds coming out.
Yeah, you have to kind of... Sorry, like okay, you kind of have to imagine that you're in 1969 in a record store. What was the biggest album of 1969? Probably Abbey Road by the Beatles, right? So you'd have stuff like Here Comes the Sun, Come Together, and you see, oh, Led Zeppelin, who's that? You put it on, and then dazed and confused starts. You're like, fucking hell. Like, that must have sounded like the earth ending back then.
No, of course. And it's also interesting so we're going to go into the oldest forms of what it is. And obviously, like anything, you can always trace it back as far back as anyone can trace anything back. But I want to go into the 50s and start off with Memphis Blues. Now, this might be a bit weird for some, but when you think of people like Howlin' Wolf and the way, you know, he played guitar, for example, you know, Pierce Spoonful, for example. Like the guitar, it's power chord and it's hard. Like, it might not be fully distorted, but he's hitting hard as he can, and it's a power chord, like down, down, like that. And that is like the start, I feel like, of metal, where like it's power chords hitting them hard and making it sound aggressive. And then even if you go a bit further in the 50s, when you got Ling's Ray's Rumble, that song was banned. I'm just going to point that out.
Really?
This song was banned. Yeah, because it was too aggressive at the time. In 1958. Because
that's incredible.
I know, right? And in distortion isn't. I know the distortion isn't compared to what it is now because of the time. Link Ray like shove a fucking pencil in his speaker to create the distortion because the pedals didn't exist then.
Didn't have his Boss Metal Zone back then, did he?
No, that wasn't until the 70s. Oh. No, we'll get to that pedal though when we get to the death metal.
Okay.
All those listeners waiting for that one.
Oh yeah, all the guitar nerds.
Stuff. Yeah, all the guitar nerds. All cranked out to 10. Anyway, I digress. So Rumble was banned because, well, the point was, it was called Rumble. It was the point of creating chaos. Like, if you listen to the song, not only it does start off a bit slow with the chords, even though the chords are quite aggressive, it gets a bit chaotic at times. And I think the point is that it was meant to be the sound of rumbling. It was meant to be the sound of chaos and destruction at the time anyway.
Yeah.
And the radio at the time was worried. People were worried about it influencing juveniles to cause bad behavior while listening to said song. And that's why it was banned at the time. Obviously, looking back, it's a bit ridiculous, but I'm just pointing out, like, you have to put yourself in the time frame where these came out.
Yeah.
And obviously, so these are very, old incantations of what these metal, well, not metal, but what metal would become. And then obviously in the 60s, things start kicking up a notch, especially later 60s, I would say, with like things like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and stuff like that. And though I wouldn't necessarily class these as metal in terms of Black Sabbath metal, they're definitely hard rock, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think this is before we head into 1970 with Black Sabbath, I would like to mention Coven.
Yeah, definitely.
You know who I mean? Do you know who I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yes. So obviously in '69, Coven does have a lot of similarities to Black Sabbath. I wouldn't call it metal, but there's definitely some influence there. Even in the back of the back of the album cover, I think one of the members is actually doing a devil horn sign, even before Dio made it popular.
Before Gene Simmons claimed he invented it.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever claims to invent it,
probably Coven. Let's face it.
Yeah, probably Coven. Unless they possibly. Oh, sorry, go on.
It's an Italian gesture because Ronnie James Dio comes from an Italian family, but he did this, didn't he?
Yeah,
which was is meant to ward off demons.
Ah, yes, that was it. Actually,
so,
it's interesting, isn't it, how different perspectives on the satanic imagery comes in, and I think that's one thing we have to point out when we start going into the 70s, especially with things like Black Sabbath and other bands to come. There is a lot of themes of Satanism and Anton LaVey type of ideas and cultic stuff. The occult itself. There's quite a lot of heavy themes about this type of thing in the genre. Obviously, at the time, this was quite edgy. I know it looks kind of cheesy now because we're used to it now, and I get it. Don't get me wrong, but obviously at the time it was quite out there. Caused a lot of controversy. Exactly. Even led to the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. When
it got more out of control, let's say. But we won't go into how it got out of control in the early 90s until we get to the black metal video. We'll stick to just the original for now. So let's go into what albums are actually important within the scene of heavy metal and how it came into the metal genres to come after. We are going to mention, as a disclaimer, we are going to put in a new wave of British heavy metal in this, as well as traditional heavy metal. Some of you may not want to have that. Some of you may think that's a good idea. We just personally felt it was better, as the genres are very linked together, especially when you claim with things like British Steel, Judas Priest and stuff, which we will get to.
Oh, yeah.
But there's probably going to be a few crossover bands anyway, in terms of like videos. So like we probably are going to mention Venom a few times in a few of these videos, probably mention other bands like Iron Maiden and so forth. So be prepared for that too. So we'll start off with Black Sabbath and the album Black Sabbath, February 14th.
With the song Black Sabbath.
Oh, yeah, the self-titled. I like that a lot. Classic album cover. We all know the woman on the front.
Yeah.
And we all, February 14th, 1970, the official day, I like to say, the official day heavy metal started. It's its birthday, let's say.
The unholy birthday.
The unholy birthday of Black Sabbath. So, what would you do? How would you describe Black Sabbath's first album?
I mean, the obvious sort of connotation with the first track, which is the song Black Sabbath, is it's very doom. I wouldn't call it doom metal, because I don't feel like that as a style had been kind of gestated and birthed yet.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the history of Black Sabbath. Like, the guitarist Tony Iommi, I'm sure if you're into metal, you know this story, but he used to work in a sheet metal factory in Birmingham, in the Midlands, where he was born and grew up. He was like 16 or 17 or something, and he was using this machine which would cut strips of metal. And he had no training on it, because, I guess that wasn't a thing 50 years ago. And a piece of metal, I might be paraphrasing, but a piece of metal, I think, got caught in the machine, dragged his hand into it, and 2 of his fingertips just got sliced off. And he was a guitarist, and at first he thought, oh shit, now I can't play guitar anymore. But he started experimenting with lower tunings to accommodate his injured fingers, and he made himself plastic prosthetics for his fingertips. And that, with the lower tuning, which would allow him to play guitar more comfortably, the music he was playing naturally started to sound heavier. So he had that heavy sound, and he worked in a metal factory.
Yeah,
you can see where this is going. And at some point, he discovered that interval that's in the song. I forget the name of it. It's the Devil's Interval, right? Is it a minor third?
The diminished fifth. The Diablos and Musica.
Completely okay. Diminished fifth. Okay, cool. So I was completely wrong there.
Diminished fifth or augmented fourth, depending on the outlook on life, let's say.
Yeah, and Black Sabbath, the song, the lyrics are written by Geezer Butler, right? Apparently, he was into loads of occult stuff, like messing around with like Ouija boards and all this sort of, nonsense. Really.
Classics.
He said he woke up and saw a shadowy figure at the foot of his bed, and he went, "Oh, that's a bit scary, isn't it?" And then the title of the song is based on an old horror film, which is also called Black Sabbath.
Ah, yes. I love the background on that. Thanks for letting me know on that. That was really interesting. Obviously, I know about the Tony Iommi story, but for those who don't, now you do, and it's a glorious story.
It's one of those stories that should be taught in Sunday school, I think.
Definitely, yes. Definitely. Or the kindergarten or nursery kids, depending on where you're watching this.
It's essential metal
singing
knowledge.
Paranoid. So yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a great album overall as well.
Yeah,
Not
fantastic.
only is the self-titled track, Black Sabbath itself, classic for its diminished fifth interval and doom, proto-doom sounding. I have to give Nib its due in this one. There are songs are in this track, but Nib especially, it's a very hard-driven song with very vivid lyrical imagery, I feel, of Satan and stuff. So definitely out there. I can imagine some, young teenage kid listening to it as it came out, and the parents hearing Ozzy scream, "My name is Lucifer, please take my hand," and then banning them from playing it again.
Yeah,
so,
just like grabbing the record and throwing it out the window.
Exactly. So obviously we're trying not to go too far into some of the albums, because we don't want to make the video too long and we got a lot to get through, but some of them we might talk more than others like this because of how important certain ones are. Obviously we have to mention Paranoid in this same bracket. It came out later on in 1970, and I feel, oh, hello,
there it is. Look how nice it is. I tell you what, Reagan, while this album is one of my favorites in any genre outside of metal. It's just a fantastic piece of work. For such a great album, that cover really is naff, isn't it? Like, I really don't get what they were going for. It's a man in like purple undies and tights with like a cardboard shield and sword and a bike helmet.
Yeah, it's fabulous, I think. I mean, we have to probably do a whole episode on bad album covers. Yeah. Nice one. And the fact that the album cover is related to the title of War Pigs rather than the actual title of Paranoid. So it seems to be juxtaposed as well. But they digress. Despite the naff cover, we do have some great songs. Obviously, War Pigs being the starter of the album, a beautiful start to an album, I must say.
Yeah.
And Ozzy, with his lyrical genius, Reuben Masters with Masters, and obviously Paranoid following Pursuit, which, let's face it, Paranoid is like, when it comes to metal, Paranoid is like the root of it all, almost. Like, Paranoid is what everyone goes to. It's I can't say in words how important that song is for the genre.
It's Black Sabbath's most well-known song by a huge margin, I think. I think that is their Enter Sandman.
Yeah, I agree.
For a song that was written last minute because the label wanted a hit, it's pretty fucking good. Yeah. Like, it's great.
Sometimes that happens with bands. They go to quick ones that seem to grab our ears. Why? We don't know.
Pinball is another example by The Who. Apparently that whole album was completely finished and the label went, there's no hits on it. And Pete Townsend went, fine. And he wrote Pinball Wizard in like 5 minutes, and now that's arguably their biggest song as well.
Yeah, it's the irony in it. Sometimes the songs, these songs, they get more attention than other songs, and I thought, I spent like 5 minutes writing this, how come it's grabbing people's attention more? I think people just like simplicity in music sometimes, and they can really affect the song quite well with the right amount of simplicity. Obviously, I don't want to go too far into the album. So, you do have to
I do just want to say that, like, if you're interested in this as a subgenre of traditional heavy metal, and you only listen to one album, it should probably be Paranoid. You know, I'd argue that saying you're into metal and you don't listen to Paranoid on the regular is like saying you're a Christian and you don't read the Bible.
Yes,
it is. Like, it's the gospel of metal. It is Paranoid.
No offense to my Quakers brothers out, though. I respect you.
No, of course not.
So, when we think of 1970, what else comes to your mind?
What else should we listen to from this year? Let's have a look.
Deep Purple in rock.
Yeah, they're a funny one for me. Deep Purple. There are a couple albums where theirs weren't there on the list. There were 2 studio releases and a live album.
Definitely.
I went through. Here's the thing. I think if someone said to me, I think Deep Purple are just hard rock, I would go, yeah, that's fair enough. I think I agree. If someone else said, well, I think they're heavy metal, I would go, barely.
Yeah.
I think
they're just shy off.
Yeah, they had some heavy stuff, like, but also a lot of blues and a lot of stuff that was more kind of almost like progressive rock. Like, you can definitely see there are massive influence on bands like Dream Theater and later Opeth.
Yeah, definitely on the prog side. I feel like they were really important on the prog side of metal.
Yeah,
bringing in that idea anyway.
I wasn't. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was going to move into the other album that came out in 1970, but it's on Deep Purple. You kind of just mentioned quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't massive on Deep Purple in rock, which is probably quite controversial to say. I love Child in Time because I love Ian Gillan's ridiculous high vocals in that song.
Yeah, Child in Time's a classic.
I think the next one after that, Machine Head, is a classic.
Yeah.
You know, Highway Star, I Think I'm a Leo.
Highway Star is like just the crazy album opener when you think about it.
Yeah. You got Smoke on the Water, which is overplayed for sure. I get,
but it's also important.
Yeah, I get why guitar store employees are sick to death of songs like that, and like Stairway to Heaven and Smells Like Teen Spirit. But the thing is, there's a reason it got overplayed in the first place, because it is that good.
Exactly. Yeah, like let's face it. I mean, how many guitarists learned "Smoke on the Water" when they first started guitar? No, probably all.
I think it was the second riff I ever learnt to play.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit late to it. Don't get me wrong. I probably learned it like a few months into playing the guitar, but it still learned it. It was so big and it's easy to play. So don't be deceived. "Smoke on the Water" might be easy in the intro, but the solo is another story.
Richie Blackmore is an incredible guitarist. They all. Did you listen to the live album Made in Japan?
Yeah, I did listen to their like live of the Highway Star was incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where I listen to it and I go, man, I wish I was there.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. Also, kind of killed the bootleg market for the live albums, which is a good thing. Independently, I look at it.
Yeah, like every musician is on fire on that album.
Definitely,
just some of the best players in rock and metal.
I have to probably give a mention here while we're in 1970, slowly moving into another band called Uriah Heep, which is interesting. I would say it's quite heavy at the time. However, it was that sort of moment of like, I don't think people were quite ready for the genre yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it didn't quite have the catchiness of Black Sabbath to pull you in. However, though it was panned by critics at the start, even, I've got this quote here, no joke, someone from Rolling Stone called Melissa Bliss said this about the album, very easy, very humble, right? He said, "If this group makes it, I will commit suicide. On the first note, you don't want to hear any more."
Oh my God.
It's strong. It's strong. I know. Like, that's how bad it got.
That seems to be a theme for bands back then who were pushing boundaries, and people didn't know how to think about, how to analyze it, and what to think of what they were doing. Led Zeppelin infamously had terrible reviews to start, and now
I was going to mention Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, most people, when you say who are the best rock band ever, they go Led Zeppelin. You know.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. We should move on a bit more. So obviously we don't want to stick to 1970 for too long. Obviously another probably honourable mention would be Kingdom Come by Searle or Baltimore, but recent album discovery, but definitely a pleasant one. I love the guitar in it, but we'll have to probably move a little bit forward from this because these are all the early starts. Let's go a bit more into the 70s. We're probably going to have to mention bands like UFO / Scorpions. Especially the early versions, like the original Scorpion Lonesome Crew. Obviously, we can mention UFO as well, UFO 1, but I feel like Scorpions are kind of like an outcome of UFO almost, though some may disagree on that, and I've got nothing against UFO.
I kind of felt with those albums. It was Lonesome Crow by Scorpions, wasn't it? And UFO 1 by UFO. I kind of went like, when I listened to them, I thought, it's cool. It's not what I'd call metal, but it's fine.
Yes.
And that was
I feel like that's the case for sure. On the, I didn't feel like they were metal, but I felt like they had their place in the hard rock scene. I feel as well Scorpions had this darkly melodic style to their music, which I did quite enjoy, especially in the early. I know, obviously, when we think of Scorpions, we tend to think of the later sound, which changed a lot, as we all know.
Yeah.
But the original sound definitely had a dark, melodic tone to it. Especially Lonesome Crew's opener. But there's also one mention I have to put as Scorpion, which was a controversial thing. That was nothing to really specifically do with the sound of metal. Did you hear about the controversy of Virgin Killer from 1976?
Was this one of those songs that got pulled into court because something
No,
happened?
it wasn't the song itself. It was... Oh, no, sorry. It wasn't the song itself. It was actually the album cover that caused the controversy.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm aware of that. And I do think, like, whatever your artistic intentions were, I think that cover is fucking awful.
Yes.
And if my band suggested anything remotely like that, I would be very close to just walking out the door.
I think I would. Like, I think I probably would
yeah.
at that point.
If you're curious about the album cover, don't Google it. It's just not. It's not cool.
It's
not
really any point to
No.
look it up. You don't need to, but you know, we're not going to mention what it is. But
no, that's a very good idea not to talk about.
Just make sure the curiosity don't kill the cat if you are watching this. Going on to more happier days, let's go to Blue Oyster Cult as well as Scorpions. Now, we have to talk about the self-titled 1972 album. Fantastic album. I don't care what anyone says. I love Blue Oyster Cult. And it's an amazing combination of prog and blues. But what I also love about the album is it contains a lot of experimentation. You know, you have everything from not just the prog and sort of rock and blues side, but you also got the psychedelic and the country. There's so much going on, and I love it for that reason. You can tell the band was really trying to foot itself into where it wants to be musically before they cement themselves into who we know now. I think it's perfect. I feel like the heavier side of the album, which was like Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll, brilliant song. You can tell that that's the heavy side of it. Like, there seems to be sort of like a lot of reminiscence of heavy metal within that song specifically. And obviously we can't not talk about Telescope. That would set the tone. The workshop of the telescopes, which set the tone for the whole album. I don't know why I got confused with that. That's my bad. For what Blue Oyster Cult would become, I would say that that's the bread and butter song from their perspective as a band, and every song to come from them, kind of, that's the OG sort of like foundation, I believe. That's because it's a brilliant song. The image, the lyrical imagery, the sounds, just like, you know, that they create, it really screams like Photo, Don't Fear the Reaper, You Get My Drift, and Godzilla and stuff. So I don't know if you want anything to mention on top of that, but that's my opinion on that album. I do have a big love for it.
I think I agree with you. I mean, I probably don't love it as much as you. I was pleasantly impressed by how good it actually was.
Definitely, yes.
I'm not sure if I'd rush to go back to it, but it's one of those albums you can put on and you can listen to it from beginning to end and think it feels like a journey. Sure. Every song has its own identity, and I think it all fit together really well.
No, for sure. I agree on that. Definitely worth a listen. And obviously the later stuff is also good. Like, Godzilla and Blue. Godzilla is a great song, one of my favourites, for example.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Obviously, when there's Don't Fear the Reaper. But we'll carry on. Obviously, from there, we have the other Deep Purple, which is Machine Head, which we did briefly mention, but I have to give it a re-mention at this point because that album is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's
so
good. Writing. I have to give it one more mention before we move on from 1972. Let's go for more later points, though. We have to kind of go into maybe Judas Priest, going into the mid to late 70s. We probably have to mention Judas Priest and Motorhead. Like, I feel like they're not new wave for British heavy metal. I feel like they just shied off in terms of timeline.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
We know that Motorhead are this type of band that bridges between the idea of the new wave of British heavy metal and traditional metal. But even Lemmy himself but just stated that he doesn't believe it to be that genre. I think he believed it was just shy off in the timeline, like a bit too early. Same with Judas, but definitely influential enough alongside Iron Maiden and Venom and all that. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Worth a mention. So obviously, we could talk about Rock and Roller. But do we want to talk about Rock and Roller?
I actually, when I listened to the whole, because I only knew the title track, which is a bit, it's a bit silly. Listening to it, I kind of went, like the whole album, I kind of thought, actually, this is all right.
I'll be honest, I was expecting worse.
Yeah, the reputation preceded it, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know the self-titled and think, okay, if this is what it all sounds like, it must be that bad. But like listening to the opening track, I thought, well, it's not bad. I can listen to it. It's just I wouldn't probably choose to listen to it if you get my drift.
But that title track is like, what is going on? It's like is it disco almost? It's such a weird track. And when I saw Priest
Definitely
at
weird.
Bloodstock a couple of years ago, they played that song, and you could
Really?
tell when that riff started, like, you could feel everyone in the crowd going, "They're not really this." They're not
All the
playing.
songs.
What was it they didn't play? The first track of British Steel. I forget the name.
It's a rapid fire.
Yeah, they didn't play Rapid Fire, but they did play Rock and Roller, which is bizarre. But there you go.
That's the weird thing about. Well, let's go to British Steel now that you mentioned it, which we all have to mention at some point. Going into, let's say, 1990, we're going to mention both British Steel and Ace of Spades, but let's talk about British Steel first, because on the topic of Judas Priest. And Wayne, what can we say about this album that hasn't already been said? Let's face it.
It's very, 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 very good. And you should all go out and buy it now.
I remember like cooking in the kitchen, chopping vegetables to the album to keep you motivated to do it. You know, chopping those carrots to Breaking the Law.
Oh yeah, man, what a riff!
Yeah, like I will say one thing I have to give this album as well, of the band in general, not just the album, the excellent utilization of two guitarists. Like they really thought, we have two guitarists, so let's use this to the fullest. You know, let's give us as much detailed harmonies and slightly different variations as much as possible, and I think that's really good texture to the album. And however, I don't know, there's other bands that did do a good use of two guitars as well, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
I just have to kind of comment it definitely with Judas Priest.
Yeah, I mean, and while I would say British Steel and Judas Priest, it's heavy metal, right? It's traditional heavy metal. A song like Rapid Fire is bordering on thrash. Stuff like
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Stuff like Grinder and like United is almost United, like basically power metal, isn't it? Grinder and what's the other one? Their amazing hit, Living After Midnight.
Living After Midnight. Yeah.
That could be like a fucking Bon Jovi song. Come on.
Yeah, so there's a bit of variation in the album. Oh, no, it's great. I love the cheese. But like you said, like there is. How would you describe it? It was thrash before thrash. I feel like that's some people can describe it. I mean, like ask Metallica, they wouldn't be where they were without British Steel. You know.
Did you see the footage of Judas Priest playing at the Power Trip Festival? And in the front row, in front of the barrier, you've got James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett just air guitarring Rapid Fire. It's so cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
you can tell where their inspiration stems from. And obviously, we have to mention Ace of Spades before we go into the new wave.
What, the song or
the album and the song, like both, I suppose, deserve just as much right. Because, like British Steel, it did really influence metal, especially the new wave of British heavy metal. And let's face it, Ace of Spades, like Paranoid, is almost a staple within all metal. Like,
for sure.
Everyone knows Ace of Spades. I mean, and obviously the aggression from Lemmy on that album is phenomenal. Like the bass chords being just slammed with his croaky voice. It's amazing.
And like the live album they did, No Sleep Till Hammersmith, is again, it's one of those shows when you listen to it, you really wish you could have been there. Oh yeah,
definitely. Because we have to go back to Hammersmith soon, actually.
Yeah, well, it wasn't recorded in Hammersmith. Did you know that?
Oh, did it not? I thought it was. Okay, I've been lying.
No, that's a really common misconception because it's called No Sleep Till Hammersmith. It was recorded in like, I think London. No, not London. Somewhere. It was recorded elsewhere. But on the tour, they kept saying like, "Hey, no sleep till Hammersmith," because Hammersmith Apollo was going to be the last venue on the tour. So that's what the album's called. That. But yeah, it's like you listen to it, you can just picture the chaos of them on stage playing, and all these kids just beating each other up. And every song is really fast. Between each song, Lemmy's just like, right, okay, lads, this is the next song. It just starts like the next, barrage of noise.
Everything's a hit in the face and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's all great.
I mean, let's face it, we all know Lemmy's God, so we'll move on from that statement. So,
Lemmy, Ozzy, Rob Halford are like the metal gods.
yes, the Trinity, you could say.
Yeah.
But we'll so move on to the big, I don't know, what would you call them? There's quite a few big bands from this point onwards. We're probably going to have to mention Saxon, Iron Maiden, and Venom at this point, because this is going to be like the cut-off point, I think, for the genre. But I think after we've gone from this point, we should look at its general resurgence and where this particular traditional heavy metal genre is today. But let's carry on anyway with Saxon. I know you wanted to mention something about this, so I'm going to give you the mic.
So I really appreciate how Saxon are an important band. I really don't like them. I don't know. I know that sounds ridiculous of me to say, but I don't think... it's not that I don't think they're good, I just don't like them. I've seen Saxon.
Really? Oh,
I saw them. They were the last band on before Judas Priest at Bloodstock 2021. And I'd heard a few of their songs and went, okay, they're quite cool. And they come on. And you know when bands do that thing where they make a mistake, but it's obvious that it's all staged? And I hate that sort of stuff. And he stopped the song and went, whoa, 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 guys, I can't hear the crowd. Can I get more of the audience in my monitors? And he was like, scream for me. And we all went, yeah. And he went, yeah, you sound cool. Let's get some drums. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's get some bass in there. Like, whatever. And he kept adding more and more instruments. And then the guitars came back in and he was like, yeah. And this is what he said. I kid you not. He said, we're building a house out of rock and roll.
Ooh.
And I was just like, I want to leave. This is dreadful.
Yeah,
I'm just there like cringing. All the dads.
I'll be honest. I have a place in my heart for them because I do listen to them a bit. I do like them. Granted, they're not as good as Iron Maiden and Venom. We can all agree on that. Well, not all.
Yeah, I think that's just like the logical truth.
But I'm not going to shit on them. I do respect them as musicians and their influence. Sure. And also, I do enjoy some of the songs. I will point that out. So, I will say they definitely they marked their place in history. Let's put it that way, despite the cheese. All right, moving on from Reuben's trauma of Saxon. We're going to have to move on to...
That's fine.
That's all right. Yeah, they always do. Good old Rob. Iron Maiden. So we might, but I feel like it's important to go Iron Maiden now. We'll have to go to Saxon. So Iron Maiden, self-titled, Paul as vocalist. Opinion.
I think that album's really good. I'm actually going to see Paul Di'Anno in December. He's playing at a pub in Weston. And he's only playing songs from the self-titled and Killers. So that's going to be sick. Yeah, I think that's going to be really good.
That's awesome. Actually, I'll tell you a little funny story as well.
Okay.
About Iron Maiden. Speaking of old Iron Maiden, in the 70s, before they were big with the self-titled and stuff, a friend of mine sold them for 50p in a pub.
Yeah, I remember. I think I've met them.
Yeah, it was Wendy.
Yeah. Yeah,
you guys probably don't know who I mean, but I just want to point that out. I thought that was really cool. Like, someone actually saw Iron Maiden for 50p and had a good time. Like, I mean, I'm just jealous, I'll tell you. Anyway, self-titled album, great album.
Yeah,
definitely. Obviously, I think Killers are better when we are talking about Paul, but
I think just slightly.
I do appreciate the self-titled for sure.
Yeah, I feel like Killers is
the Harlot, great song.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
That's okay. I feel like Killers is a step more into what Iron Maiden became known for. And, you know, again, with Maiden, we have to mention the imagery and the marketing is outstanding. I mean, I've bought my fair share of stupid Iron Maiden merch.
We've all love a bit of Eddie, don't we?
Yeah, we've got to have Eddie somewhere. Whenever a metalhead buys some more shirts, one of them has to say Iron Maiden on it. That's the law.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen people wear Iron Maiden shirts and don't really know who the band is. I mean, that's how it is. They're that big. But despite that, the image is just huge.
Yeah, I mean, their artwork is incredible
to this day.
mean,
and obviously the influence on proto sort of power metal and general melodic metal as a whole is like you can't ignore that aspect of it.
Just those amazing paintings by Derek Riggs. I mean,
it's that
so
power.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice. No, Power Slave's great. I love that album. Some great solos on it.
Power Slave is up there. It's one
obviously we have to mention.
Favorites.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sorry, let me not talk there. So I obviously have to mention Number of the Beast as well, just for the fact that it's the first one with Bruce Dickinson, who is the more famous singer of Iron Maiden, though whoever you prefer is up for debate. I personally love both, though, for their own reasons. Look at Reuben going out his collection.
Yeah.
If you guys love Reuben's collection, for anyone watching, if anyone watching who is loving Reuben's collection, if you ever want him to do a video of his A to Z album vinyl collection.
Oh, I could, yeah. Oh, I could explain how I alphabetized them by year and genre, and it'd be really boring.
People will love that. If anyone wants it, comment, and we'll get him to do it. Okay. And I watch myself. I'll just be a spectator. So we've mentioned Iron Maiden, obviously the sort of the melodic influence in metal. But let's look at the more raw, fast, aggressive influence in metal, being Venom, let's say. You can't deny that Venom was heavy as hell at the time.
Yeah.
Black metal.
Yeah, wow. What an album. Like, especially for the time.
Definitely.
They definitely tried to put off this image of they were like an evil band, right? Because people assume Black Sabbath are quite an evil sounding band, and they do have their kind of, I guess, scary music, but it's all from quite a Christian standpoint, really. A lot of their stuff, it's all very anti the devil and anti occult and stuff. It's warning against the dangers of things like that. Whereas Venom were very outright with like, no, we are warring on the side of Satan, even though they weren't. It was all an act. It was a pretty cool act. So,
Chrono fucking nailed it. I'll be honest with you, with his image for sure, and his vocals as well, especially. I feel like, though people might argue with this, feel free to. I feel like Venom was the first time where metal became extreme metal, like where that was the transition to extreme metal for sure with Venom.
Yeah, it was like the time when you could go for the first time almost. I like heavy metal, but I'm not really into that extreme stuff like Venom.
Yeah, exactly. It was getting it was a pushing boundaries for the time for sure. Even now, like if you play Venom now, people still think it's heavy, unless you're into really heavy music. But if you said it to, if you get to someone who isn't either not that much into heavy metal or not at all, and you sold them Deep Purple or Black Sabbath, even like the early Black Sabbath, I don't know, if you sold them, I don't know, The Wizard or something, and then showed them Venom, black metal, there's a clear that they will go, that's too heavy. I don't mind Deep Purple, but that's too heavy. There's a point where people are like, that's getting too much. It's definitely a make or break. But it's shock that it gave people is what created metal to be what it is now, and we have to thank Venom for Death, even Thrash, and for Black. No, they're not the only band to inspire it. We have to thank them for it. I mean, even Chuck from Death said like Venom was his big inspiration for death metal. I think he even said in an interview that without Venom, there probably wouldn't even be a death metal, Yeah. And let's face it, We talk about Bathory and black metal. I mean, again, Bathory took a lot of inspiration from Venom. Though there's been a lot of arguments about that. We won't go into that now. That's for another video between Chrono and Hawthorne. But despite that, obviously Venom is just phenomenal in its in that regards. And I think that gives us to the kind of the end of this sub-genre to the next one, the next video. Obviously, we have to give some honourable mentions of resurgence, I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Within the genre. What would you say when you think of resurgence for British heavy metal?
So, resurgence of that kind of style, I mean, there's a lot of debate over whether or not ghosts are metal. There's a lot of debate over if they're even any good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I personally love them.
I like them personally.
I class them as heavy metal because I kind of feel like you could argue. A lot of people say, "Oh no, I think they're hard rock," and I can see completely where they're coming from. But I think a song like Ritual or Cerise, you go, I mean, there's chuggy, muted power chords and singing about the devil. That's metal, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that, for sure. And what was the album? I mean, like, I think like Ritual or something, one of the older stuff, though it might sound a bit like, I don't know, Blue Oyster Cult. It's definitely got like really shocking imagery.
Yeah, this one.
The lyrics.
This one's a recommendation, Meliora. That's got Cerise on it. That's probably
I think I've seen that album cover before.
It's a very cool album.
Have you seen Ghost yet, actually?
No, I've never seen them. I really, really want to.
I have.
Have you?
I saw them. Yeah, I did. It was December 8th, 2011.
Oh, okay, cool. So like early first album stuff.
It was early. Yeah, I saw them when they were really early. I remember them playing Ritual live when it was not that old, and it was great though because I never heard them before this point. I didn't look them up. I didn't bother to look up the band I was playing because I was young and stupid. But outside of that, I didn't know what to expect at all until they came on, and I just see this guy looking like some evil pope just coming onto the stage with a bunch of guys. And
you assume it's going to be like some really heavy, like black metal or something, like Gorgoroth or some shit, and then he starts playing like essentially ABBA metal.
Yeah, the music they was a bit weird because I think at the same gig, I can't remember exactly who it was. No, Trivium were headlining. I think it was also In Flames were playing as well. So I had this sort of feeling of like, there was this feeling of sort of mixture between melodic death metal and metalcore in genre-wise. But suddenly this band called Ghost comes on and they sound like Blue Oyster Cult. Is a bit different, you know.
Yeah,
it was great. I loved it, but it was also.
I love Ghost. I think all their albums are all amazing in their own way. The earlier stuff, I think either their first or second album is my favourite of the bunch, but I love all five of their records they've released.
Yes, for sure. No, they're great. I mean, I still listen to more than I haven't listened to all their songs all the way through or anything, but I've read obviously the usual ones that we all know by them, and I did enjoy them. Like I said, I don't listen to them as much as probably some other bands because I'm more on the heavier side, but I do appreciate them a lot, and they do have a place in my heart, especially for when I first saw them. I'll never forget that moment. You know, little whippersnapper just seeing an evil pope. So yeah, that's it really. In terms of resurgence, what would you say in terms of the traditional heavy metal resurgence, other than Ghost? Who else do you think comes to mind?
So an album that I discovered just through kind of looking up who are some recent bands that are carrying the torch of traditional heavy metal, and someone mentioned the album Age of Winters by The Sword.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I listened to it and I went,
"I'm not popular."
Yeah, I listened to it and I went, I'm not sure if this is like heavy metal. I think it's more of like a stoner sort of something like Red Fang or Electric Wizard, something like that. But it was cool. Like I thought it was really, really good. And some of the songs and trucks in there are amazing. It sounds like really early Mastodon, but without the grindcore influence. So it's a bit more accessible, but it's still got that super sludgy, epic song structures and like just these incredible riffs.
No, for sure.
But they split up 2 years back.
Give it a listen then. Oh, didn't he? Sorry.
Yeah.
And hear that?
Which is a shame.
Wow. Okay, well, I haven't really probably listened to it, so what I'm going to do is after we finish this video, I am going to give it a listen. I think as well, I feel like we forgot one honourable mention in this, and I feel bad forgetting it. It was Merciful Fate.
Yes. Yeah, and another band that I've been really lucky enough to see, because King Diamond tours a lot, but that one time at a couple of years back, or last year, where they went, no, we're getting Merciful Fate back together, and they headlined Bloodstock, and I got to see them, and it was one of the best gigs I've ever seen. So
I've heard King Diamond's really like entertaining live, and his vocals, wow.
He's epic. It's just so cool.
Yeah, the yell, this high pitched yelling from the King Diamond is amazing. And again, his influence on things like black metal is the maybe not as much as Venom or Bathory, definitely there. So let us. I feel like that's a good end. Obviously, like I said, we don't want to make the video too long, but because obviously it's going to be a bit to upload if I do. And again, we probably have maybe missed an album or two, or maybe more. For those viewers watching, if you wanted to mention any yourself, feel free to pop any in the comments section. Like I said, we wanted just to mention what we feel like was the important aspects of traditional heavy metal into one condensed video with such a big genre, and it's going to make this with the other genres coming up. We might miss occasional things here and there, but feel free to basically, put things in the comments for us to suggest. Before we do end, I showed Reuben an interesting song from 1973, didn't I?
Yes. What was it called again?
That's what I'm trying to remember. I completely forgot its name because my... So bear with me on this.
One thing I will say as well before we do end is like the whole point of the series, it isn't to kind of go... Well, the whole point of subgenres, really, they're meant to be a label to guide people. It's not supposed to be like... You shouldn't be using subgenres to correct other people. If you do that, you're a bit of a dick. I feel like, a subgenre... If I know what song or album a subgenre is, then I know what it isn't. And I can make an informed decision as to, that sounds like my thing. And hopefully when we upload more of these... Yeah, hopefully when we upload more of these, you might not want to watch every single one. You might not want to watch one about black metal because you're not into it. But you like thrash metal, so you listen to that. You watch that episode and then be like, okay. I guess with a subgenre, you should explore all of them, or as many of them as you can, and then decide which ones you particularly enjoy, and then just go down that avenue and find what you like. Because if you're not listening to something to enjoy it, there's no point. And don't let anyone else tell you different.
Yeah, no, I agree. It might be actually interesting to touch up maybe in a separate video of about metal elitism maybe, or discussions on that behaviour we see within the community.
I feel like it's a discussion worth having, because I see it all the time, this elitism, and I fucking hate it. You're not... Yeah,
we can all agree on that, I think.
Yeah, you're not better than someone else because you listen to metal. That's not what this is about. That's not what the community stands for.
It's not a good way to be in general anyway, because I see it in other genres as well, don't get me wrong. I don't want to just single out metal, but it definitely
films, TV, books, games, it exists in everything, this elitist kind of attitude. But I guess we'll get more in depth in that if we discuss that in a future video.
Yes. So if anyone wants to hear any other type of subjects like metal elitism or other forms of similar subjects to that, again, you can always comment about that. We can see what we can do for separate videos as well as the history ones. Our next genre after this will be Doom, so stay in tune for that one. And to end off the video, I finally managed to find the name. And the name of the song is Yes. Blast Damned Flame, the band's called. Blast Damned Flame, and the song is Majestic from 1973. Look it up, and you're going to see Thrash like almost 10 years before Thrash existed.
Yeah, it's amazing. The vocals are a bit questionable, but the music
Definitely.
and the drumming, the riffs, the drumming are incredible.
Yes,
yeah.
like we said, don't expect to hear Exodus when listening to it, but try and think of the context of 1973. It's quite crazy, and it's surprising how not really anyone knows about this. I've heard it barely mentioned, and it's never like when you think of traditional heavy metal, we never hear it. And I feel like it's at the time of like the same year as when Bloody Sabbath came out, so it's kind of weird. But
another
like I said,
album to recommend as well.
Definitely, yeah. Bloody Sabbath. Like I said, I could probably recommend.
Great.
Yeah, even the Bonnie James Dio, I still go for that. Heaven and Hell, great. But I think we should end it here. Reuben, do you think? I think that's a good.
Yeah, I feel like we've given people enough to kind of go on, or maybe the title alone is enough for people to go, nah, I'm good. So
maybe you never know. You might see my face and go, I'm going to take off that actually.
Anyone who has watched, thanks. It means a lot. Hopefully we're entertaining at the very least, informative, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's always love for anyone who's taken time to listen to me and my friends speak. So much love to all, and the people who want to be involved, like you, Reuben. So thank you for joining me on this, and hopefully our next video will please the people as well. So take care, everyone, and goodbye.